right, Jacob.
Oh, what's up, Pop?
Here's the thing with the Road Runner is, we're going to put it away for the winter time. We're into winter now.
Yeah.
But we're going to clean it up before we go to winter time.
Okay.
The reason is, and we're going to do some pressure washing. The reason we're going to do that is, see, it's full of this dirt and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And when the car gets wet, that stays down in there just festering wet. It stays wet for days, and that keeps it just eating away at your car.
Yeah.
So we're going to blow all that stuff out. Now, there's some inside the fender here, and there's stuff all along here. And I was just taking a hose and just putting mud out of there. See that? I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not, but anyhow, it's all along the crack of the trunk. So we're going to open that trunk up and blow around this trim. And the poor old car is rusty enough. And I like cars with patina, but this is getting too far for me. And so that is also the reason that someday we're going to do a complete restoration on the car, fix all the rust and the rot, and paint it back to its original yellow. And I know that's not everybody's favorite. I happen to like yellow. That's what it was born with. That's where it's going to go back. So anyway, so we'll get this pressure washer started, and maybe we'll knock some of the scaly crap off too. That's not the intention. The intention's not to clean the engine. We're just going to get this pine needles and junk out of the way.
Yeah.
And when we're done with that, I've got new rubber lines that go to the front wheels.
Yeah.
And those new rubber lines are, I think, critical. I've had them pop on me before. Not while I was driving down the road, thank God, but I was sitting in the garage one day and getting ready to back the car out of the way so that I could just do whatever in the garage. And I pushed the pedal down, and all of a sudden, pop, went straight to the floor. And I walk over, and there's brake fluid running down on the ground because the rubber line that goes to the wheels, there's one that goes to the rear axle. You got the hard line going to the along the frame rail. And if you're down in snow country, you probably want to change those steel lines out. This car was California. We've looked at those lines and they're in good shape. But anyway, it goes from rubber to the rear axle, and we want to replace that piece of rubber out. And then we're going to do bleeding the brakes. And most people know how to bleed brakes, but we have some pointers, and you and I work real good at that. We've done several brake jobs where you and I bled them, so you can give your point of view from pumping the pedal, and I'll give my point of view from bleeding.
All right.
And in the future you'll be doing some bleeding too, and I'll be pumping. That's the fun job's pumping the brake, because I could sit and drink a soda while you're working. That's always good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get this pressure washer running.
There's that beautiful yellow paint. Look at all that dirt. Pretty good. Bye-bye, dirt. Go back to the ground. Whoosh.
look in here real quick. You see this trunk extension here?
Yeah.
Here's our trunk, and here's our trunk. See how it's bumped up right here?
Yeah.
That's from that tire that blew apart and took that fender apart.
Oh.
What I'm going to do is replace some hoses. Now, Road Runner 68, they had dual master cylinders. This has manual brakes. It don't need power brakes. I can lock these things up at 150 miles an hour, and there's any more braking power you need then, actually need less, because locking up your brake is going to make you skid a lot further. That's why we have anti-lock brakes these days. So most people don't know this, but drum brakes actually have more stopping power than disc brakes. But if you're running down a steep hill and you're road racing, drum brakes overheat and fade away. Disc brakes most likely won't, because there's a lot of surface area where air can get in and chill those brakes. So that's the advantage to disc brakes. They're also easier, they're much easier to service and all those things also, but people say they want to put, I got to upgrade my brakes. If your drum brakes don't stop your car, you need to find out what's wrong. Now, you can put a whole disc kit in and then you're cool as can be. You're the coolest kid on the block, I guess. But drum brakes have more stopping power than disc.
The more you know.
All right. Now, let's see here. See this drum coming off?
Yeah.
This originally did not come apart like this. Okay, so this is a big, oh, I don't know, 11-inch drum.
It's about a foot.
Fairly clean. Wheel cylinders are not leaking oil, so we don't have anything to worry about there.
Yep.
Now, the biggest reason we're in here is we are going to, where's that package at? There it is. We're going to replace these. And it goes back here, a little clip and the nut, and then this screws onto the back of the wheel cylinder here. So we're going to put new ones of these on. Now, if you have an old car, this one here and the one in the back have never been replaced before, and that puts them at well over 50 years old. And inside this hose, it can separate and squish down, so when you push your brakes, the fluid will go into the wheel cylinder and apply your brakes, and when you let off the pedal, it's supposed to run back and let your brakes release, but they'll squish down and hold your brakes on. Then I've seen it where when that inner liner comes apart, it starts to pressurize the outside liner, and it ain't made to hold pressure, and pop. Now normally this right here doesn't come apart like this. Normally this drum, see how there's a shoulder on here?
Yeah.
Those would be swedged over with a press, and that holds the drum to this hub. I didn't do it that way because I want to be able to service this without taking this apart all the time. All right, so that's done. And let's take a gander here. You can see it goes from there to the back there. I hope the camera's on it. Okay. Now, we're going to bleed these brakes. We've got that change. We got that change. So there's our new line. All right, we're going to explain a little procedure. All right, so now me and Jacob have already done this one. We've done that one, and we've done the passenger side, and we still got to do this one here, but we're going to show a little procedure. Now, I always start with the furthest one away from the master cylinder. So I always do the passenger side rear, then I do the driver side, then I do the passenger front, and then we're going to finish up with this one here. So that's one procedure we do. All right, so now Jacob's going to show you what he does on his end. He has procedure. All right, so let me get the tool here, and then Jacob, you explain. All right, Jacob, go ahead and pump it up.
All right, so this is what you don't do.
Whoa, what are you doing?
Oh, just showing the people what not to do.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
All right, so you push it down slowly. Hold it, and don't go all the way to the bottom. Pull it back up. Let it sit for a second. Push it back down. Hold it. Pull it back up. Let it sit for a second. Push it back down. Hold it. All right, pop. And also, just hold it there. Oh, he opened it up. All right, it's going lower. And you just let it go.
Okay, Jacob.
All right. Sit for a second. Push it back down. And then it gets hard.
Okay.
Now the brakes are working. Nice.
All right, now you give him the procedure from your point of view. Now look, he holds that down until I say okay. He does not let his foot off until I say okay. That means I've opened the bleeder, his foot went down, and then I close the bleeder and give him the okay to let his foot up. Now, when I say okay, that means pump again. When I say we're done, that means you just let your foot off and, you know, and then I'll ask usually, was the pedal good and hard? Okay, so now we got all the, pretty much the air out from just what we did, but we're going to go ahead and do this down from my point of view so you can see that. So, okay, go ahead and pump it up, Jacob. All right, clear the fluid. All right, Jacob, we're done. I hope you guys got to see that. All right, next. Okay, now this, you can see where the fluid's gone down in that rear chamber.
Yeah.
Because we bled it out of the front brakes. Now, I always leave this on when we're doing the bleeding of the brakes, because every time Jacob hits the pedal, it shoots a fluid at this cap. Well, if this cap wasn't on here, it'd be all over the place. So when you bleed the brakes, just take this loose, make sure you got brake fluid in it, and set the cap back on. Otherwise, you put brake fluid everywhere. All right, now Jacob does not push the pedal all the way to the bottom of the floor. If this was a new master cylinder, you could do that. But with an older one, you can get gunk down in here. And that gunk down in here will get pushed into these little orifices in here if you push it all the way down. So that's one reason. The other reason is on a dual master cylinder, you have a bias valve down there, and that bias valve will favor the front or the rear if you have a leak in your brake system. So if the front's leaking, it'll block it off and put pressure to the rear. If it's the other way around, it'll block it off in the rear, and so you got brakes in the front. Now the brakes are compromised, but at least you still have something if you develop a hole. And so if you're bleeding just the front, you could force that bias to pop and close off the front brakes, and then you just have rear and you're trying to bleed the front, there's no fluid coming out, and you're going, whoopsie, something's wrong. So there are procedures for making that bias valve go back. Sometimes it's just re-bleed the rear and it'll come back, and you know, there's several different procedures. GM has a little clip you can put on the bias valve and different things you can do, but in any case, just pay attention to that too. Sometimes you get done doing your brake bleed and all of a sudden you don't have fluid coming out of the rear, fluid coming out of the front, your brakes are crappier than you started, and that may be why. So it's just something to check for. So I'm just going to top this brake fluid off. And that's another thing, if you got a lot of bleeding to do, make sure you get in here and check this fluid, because the last thing you want is this thing to get empty so it can pick up air. That is not good. But we're all good here now. So I think it's time for us to go for a test drive and feel what those brakes feel like. So, Jacob, what do you do when you like a video?